Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, where last episode, Raiten Memo brought out Soseki Natsume's secret with his vague testimony that the writer had asked who had done it to the dying Giselle Brett, witnessing her pointing to the back wall that he originally thought was directed at the accused, but we soon figured out that instead she was motioning towards the back wall, having been stabbed from outside the hut, a location of a certain journalist. However, Raiten has brought up a key fact in the case to proclaim his complete innocence, that Giselle was poisoned and that it wasn't on the blade, so with the likelihood that she had somehow imbibed the deadly substance, we now take on another testimony to find out the truth. Oh yes, I stabbed the Englishwoman, and it's that very fact that proves I'm innocent. Because why would I have bothered to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her? When I heard the student girl and that pompous English murderer arguing, it got my goat. If the courts weren't going to punish Brett for what she did, someone else would have to see justice done. That's a short testimony. So, you admit it then? That everything happened as I described? That you are the one who stabbed Miss Brett in the back through the rear screen? I'm not quite sure why you're saying complete innocence here then. You can blame this miserable country of ours. A country that bows to the pressure of foreign powers and lets murderers walk free. What kind of future could a country like that have? That's why I did it. I did what our pathetic leaders didn't have the guts to do. Slap bang in the middle of that charming lady's back, I plunged the blade of sweet justice right in there. As someone who spends his life seeing that the truth is told, I feel really awful about giving false information in my testimony before. But as it turns out, there was somebody else who had it in for the victim and got to her before me. That's right, you guessed it. That pretty little student girl. Now there's a woman after my own heart. You're implicating Ray again. She's the one who gave the poison to the Englishwoman and ended her pitiful existence. And suddenly, snap, this journo here is off the hook. The argument is sound, certainly. If the witness had administered the poison himself, he need only have waited for it to take effect. Subsequently stabbing the victim in the back would have been entirely nonsensical, but it's still attempted murder. /murder. And therefore, this report had nothing to do with the poisoning. Yes, it's all quite logical. That's right, it is. Logical and true. I'm glad you've all seen the light. Just at last. This is unbelievable. And after I made so much progress in proving his guilt, is he going to get away with it now? Think of Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san. They never stopped looking for a way forward until the judge's final gavel. Very well then, counsel. Proceed with what I assume to be your final cross-examination in this trial. Yes, Your Excellency. Complete innocence. Oh yes, I stabbed the Englishwoman, and it's that very fact that proves I'm innocent.
Hold it!
So, you do admit that you had murderous intentions towards Miss Brett then? Ah, the woman's very existence offended my sense of justice. Your sense of... He's claiming some sort of righteous indignation. She was pure evil, a cold-blooded killer who'd committed murder right here on our empire's soil. Did our good-for-nothing government do anything? Not a chance, so I had to step in. Fly the flag of justice, put things right for the people. Yes, it was my civic duty. That's what drove me to do it. So, in summary, murderous intentions then. Whatever you want to call it. The point is this. That Englishwoman was a blight. So I had to do what was right. For society. Yet a real wrong was done. By the student girl in the dock. A crime for which she must pay. Obviously, because the poisoning was nothing to do with me at all. Because why would I bother to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her?
Hold it!
So you still maintain that you didn't give the poison to the victim? Obviously, that'd be like putting a belt on your trousers when you're already wearing braces like these. The accused administered the poison, following which this witness stabbed the victim. An unforgivable act, certainly, but not one of murder. That crime rests on the accused's shoulders. That is how the law works, you see, yokel. Who knows? You may even learn something here today.
2 consecutive attempts on her life in the space of minutes. Quite a day for the victim. Do something that evil and you've got it coming. That's how the law works. The law of reckoning.
That's not the kind of law this court upholds.
You will reiterate why you were compelled to stab the victim then, witness. When I heard the student girl and that pompous English murderer arguing, it got my goat.
Hold it!
What exactly were they arguing about?
About what happened in that restaurant 9 months ago, and that's what. The student girl was laying into the Englishwoman for killing her beloved mentor, Dr. Wilson. Yes, John H. Wilson, a professor of medicine, invited here from England by Professor Mikatoba, no less. Right, but the Englishwoman just jeered.
Her case was to be heard by the British Consular Court in Shanghai. However, there is little doubt that she would simply have been acquitted and sent back to her homeland a free woman.
Who was eating that student girl up inside? You could see it. I really felt for her.
I can't. I can't stand here and listen to this tripe. Ray! Young girl, you stand accused here. You can't just blurt out whenever you feel like it.
No, you can't. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of some very important testimony here. Just keep quiet and listen.
But this awful man is making all of this up. Susato, please, you have to make them listen.
Return to the dock at once, Membami-san. We are in the middle of cross-examination.
Hold it!
Your Excellency, please, I implore you. That journalist is clearly not a trustworthy witness. Exactly. He's a filthy, rotten, black-hearted, bigoted, dirty, great peeping Tom.
Whoa, take it easy there.
Please, I really think the court should hear what the defendant has to say. Your Excellency, I see no need whatsoever to entertain the accused's remarks.
I will grant the request of the defense.
But, Your Excellency!
This is likely to be the final cross-examination of these proceedings. As such, I believe it would be ill-advised to stifle the defendant's obvious concerns. So, whilst recognizing that this contravenes regular protocol, I hereby call upon the defendant to speak.
Oh! Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It was nothing to do with Dr. Wilson. We were discussing the stolen poison.
Hold it!
A stolen poison that killed the victim, you mean? I suspected her of being the one to steal it. I mean, just think about how she killed Dr. Wilson.
That's true. Additionally, Miss Brett certainly had knowledge of the new poison. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin being developed for the government. Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult. That's true. I pestered Professor Mikatoba until he agreed to show me the poison when I visited his laboratory. But as I left, I was searched from top to tail. Miss Brett rather bluntly revealed the existence of the toxin we've been developing, you see. And since Soseki-san expressed such an interest in it, I felt unable to refuse. Obviously, I gave nothing away other than the fact that it was an extremely potent substance. I'm very ashamed of myself. It's just that I've had a singularly terrible experience with a deadly poison. I wanted to look my old enemy in the eye. Surely you can understand that.
To find out if my suspicions were true, I confronted Miss Brett about the poison. I told her that if there were to be an incident involving it somehow, it wouldn't just be the university. The military would be dragged into it. The whole government even. It would be a complete disaster.
And how did Miss Brett respond to your concerns?
She just curled those beautiful lips of hers and said she didn't know the first thing about it. In English, actually.
Ah, yes. Memo-san, one small question if you don't mind. I do mind. Can you see I'm busy? Clearly, you were outside the beach hut listening in while the defendant and Miss Brett were conversing. Presumably, then, it was you who wrote this article about what you'd heard. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. The story was published in this morning's edition of Show You News. The details are too accurate for it to have been written by anyone else. Sorry, don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, look at this. The entire article is almost what I said to Miss Brett, word for word. Ugh. Well, Many Memo-san.
As a Juno and as a citizen of a free country, I don't have to reveal my sources. That's a founding principle of Many Memoism.
Father's clearly right about this. That reporter did write that article, and he based it on what he overheard from outside the hut.
The details of the poison article have been updated. The eavesdropping information.
So that's what it was all about. You were trying to cover up the fact that you were listening in. That's why you came up with that stinking story about me arguing with her.
Shut up! My stories never stink! Look, whatever you say, little girl, it doesn't alter the facts. Your Excellency, there's something I want to say, and I want it to go on record. Very well, you may amend your formal testimony. The point is, if you poison someone, there'd be no reason to then go and stab the person as well. Well, I thought, you know, it's the cover-up side of things. So, yes.
Hold it!
There would be, obviously, for you. Perhaps you doubted the efficacy of the poison and sought to make sure your victim would die.
That's horse dung.
What?
That would be like pouring pepper on your Chinese ramen before you'd even tasted it. Completely reckless. Although, it might surprise you to learn that I'm a bit of an impetuous pepper pourer as it happens. Oh, pepper's great.
Once the victim had taken the poison, she would have only been minutes away from death. And yet, this man then proceeded to stab her in the back as well. There has to have been a good reason for that.
If it was the reporter who gave the poison to Miss Brett, then clearly, he must have done it prior to Ray entering the hut.
Yes, that's undeniable.
Between him leaving the hut and the victim being stabbed, there was one very crucial change in the situation.
Sorry, what change?
The reporter overheard the conversation between Ray and the Englishwoman.
Ah, yes, that's it. That's when Many Memo-san first found out the exact nature of the poison he'd used. That could be the key here.
If the victim had unwittingly taken the poison already, the reporter would have had no reason to stab her. On the face of it, that logic sounds entirely reasonable.
There's no question this man was responsible for Miss Brett's murder.
If we could think of a plausible explanation as to why he might have stabbed her even after the poisoning, I feel sure that everything would drop into place. That's what we should be looking for.
Yes, I agree. And in order to do that, I must try to glean more information.
Game's even like, you must press.
So we go to the last statement, because that's the statement we got after multiple presses. We're obviously presenting something to this point.
At this juncture.
What was the actual article again? Following a lecture you made by Soseki Natsumi on 11th of August, it's come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. So it's... Is it a cover-up on... It's not a cover-up on the poison. It's the cover-up on the method of entry of the poison. But it's still a cover-up, right? I'm assuming that it's just for the purpose of cover-up. So he found out this information from the eavesdropping, and then he changed tactic to a stabbing. but no poison was found on the blade, but it was just literally to obscure the information he found out. At the time of him finding out the information. So am I to present specifically this? Because he found out the information at the time, and therefore he wanted to obscure what was the murder weapon, which we very much already know the delivery method. Is that it?
Objection!
Well, I can think of one reason. What? But before I explain, I'd like you to confirm something for the court. Did you glean all the information for this newspaper article from what you overheard outside the hut?
Of course he did. There can be no question of that. After all, when we were all in the laboratory together, all we were told is that it was a terrible toxin.
And there is one more important fact to consider. According to the witness, Membami-san's verbal attack against the victim began as soon as she entered the hut. In other words, it would have been impossible for her to have slipped the poison into Miss Brett's drink.
Objection!
Where are you going with this, counsel? Memo-san had made it quite clear that he observed every single thing that happened in the beach hut. If the defendant had somehow found an opportunity, this man would have seen it.
Which means that Miss Brett couldn't have imbibed the poison while the defendant was present. In fact, it must have been administered to her before Membami-san entered the hut. Yes, very articulately put. Articulately.
When I walked into the hut, I immediately started to press Miss Brett about the poison. At which point, Memo-san overheard some worrying information. Worrying information? What worrying information? The information which he subsequently included in his newspaper article, namely, that the poison was being developed in strict secrecy and that it couldn't be readily obtained.
Absolutely. In fact, that's quite an understatement. The only possible place it could come from is my lab.
And furthermore, anyone afflicted by the poison would exhibit telltale signs in death. The extreme constriction of the pupils. Yes, it's quite stark when you see it. There are other poison that show similar symptoms, not among new substances that are undetectable. In other words, it would be clear that the victim's life had been ended by the use of this particular poison, which would reduce the number of suspects to only a handful of people.
Everyone in my laboratory is aware of the unique properties of the toxin we've been developing, and none of them would be foolish enough to attempt to use it for some nefarious deed. Membami-san being no exception.
Therefore, we can conclude that whoever administered this unique poison to the victim was a layperson unaware of its telltale properties.
In other words, someone like you, Raiten Memo.
It was you who stole the poison from the laboratory that day, and it was you who administered it to the unwitting victim. But you quickly realized that that was a terrible mistake, because the poison caused such unusual symptoms and was so traceable. As you listened in from the far side of the beach hut's thin walls, you learned of these facts. You'd already given the victim the poison at that point. It was too late. So you hatched a plan to disguise your mistake. A plan that involved stabbing the victim in the back through the reed screen.
Objection!
But what good could that possibly do? It's an obvious, counsel. The plan was to kill Miss Brett before the poison could take effect.
Once in the blood, the poison causes the onset of pupil constriction. But he had hoped to precipitate the victim's death before that happened, hadn't he?
Exactly. Because without any revealing signs of the new secret poison's use, no one would ever have suspected.
This is extraordinary.
Yes, the effects of the poison meant it would be too easily identified, so the killer had to mask its use, which he attempted to do by plunging a knife into the middle of the victim's back, obscuring the use of poison.
Order! The argument presented is sound. The court is satisfied that it warrants consideration. Does the prosecution have a counter-argument it wishes to put forward?
Well, there are a number of, yes, I counter completely.
Objection!
The prosecution's evasive response clearly shows that in much the same way as he nurtures the remnants of his top knot, he is clinging to lost hope. Lost hope?
That's a bit mean, that one. Ah, you pathetic, useless, fallen samurai!
Fallen? Who are you calling fallen? My burgeoning growth is on the rise.
I don't need a counter-argument.
What are you talking about?
It should be blatantly obvious. I stole the poison, you say. Gave it to the victim, you say. Stabbed her, you say. Lots of fine theories. Well, I don't need a counter-argument because you don't have an argument yourself. Where's your evidence? Yes, you make it all sound so plausible, don't you? Without evidence, it means nothing. Whereas I base my news on facts. Facts? What do you mean? Explain yourself. I mean, what the professor said early in this trial. It's all here, in my many memos. Every word, every slip of the tongue, all noted. That's what the Show You News is famous for. It's the power of the printed word. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin being developed for the government. Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult. How's that then? Blowing the story wide open. See? I, Raiten Memo, a mere reporter from the Show You News. Couldn't possibly have stolen that poison from the professor's laboratory.
Ah! But there can't be any question of it. He must have stolen the poison that day. He stole it and used it to kill... And if that's the case... As you've identified, the poison itself is the definitive evidence we need. Because whoever stole it from the laboratory that day is the true culprit here.
What's your point, you annoyingly handsome country bumpkin?
My point is this. There is one way that you, Memo-san, could have stolen the poison that day.
I have heard enough verbal conjecture now, thank you. What the court must be shown is evidence. What proof do you have that this witness stole the poison on the day in question? Okay. What proof do I have? Can I finally go to the point I want to go? Is it finally time? There is a very small amount of liquid still inside the ink reservoir. We know that this was a delivery method. She licked the nib of the pen. The pen was full of poison. The poison enters the system through that method. It's this.
Take that!
The proof, Your Excellency, is this fountain pen.
Ah! A fountain pen? How can that possibly be relevant?
These magical pens somehow seem to have enough ink to write many thousands of kanji characters. I believe they arrived in our country for the first time some 15 years ago now. Bah, I swear by a weasel hair, calligraphy brush, and nothing else. These newfangled pens are merely a fad.
Well, as a forward-thinking man of words, obviously I love my fountain pen. Suck up a soup corn of sumptuous ink, and one's work is a wash with words to the blink of an eye.
That's right. Fountain pens have a small reservoir in the barrel, into which ink is sucked up through the nib of the pen in order to write with later. What does all this talking of sucking up ink have? Ah! And just as it's possible to suck ink up into the reservoir, it's also possible to eject it through the nib again, of course.
My word! Can this really be?
Well, Memo-san? When you saw the deadly poison before your eyes in the laboratory that day, you used your fountain pen, your very lifeblood, to steal some of it, didn't you? By siphoning the poison up through the nib and into the pen's reservoir. Ah!
Objection!
More absurdity! That never happened! True, we've heard that there were procedures in place to prevent thefts like this from the laboratory. But would anyone have thought to look inside a fountain pen of all places?
No, I'm a little ashamed to say that for fear of offending our guests, such a detailed search would not have been conducted. Well, this is quite startling, I must say.
I remind the court that this pen was found in the clutches of the victim when she died. In other words, it was dropped at the scene by Many Memo-san. So the crucial question is, when exactly was the pen dropped?
Are you suggesting?
The natural conclusion is that in your haste to act whilst the victim was distracted for a moment, you dropped the pen after you emptied the poison from it into her glass.
Objection!
There could be any number of alternative explanations. For example, the witness could have been using his pen to write down details of his conversation with the victim. And when shocked by one of her outrageous answers, the pen fell from his quivering hand.
Objection!
No, that can't be. If it was, how do you explain why the pen was devoid of ink? What? As you can see for yourself if you examine the evidence, there would appear to be no ink present in the reservoir. What newspaper reporter goes to interview someone with nothing in his pen? No, the pen was dropped after the poison that filled his reservoir had been emptied into the victim's glass. I thought it was via the licking, because of the fact that he kept licking his pencil the entire time we were doing this trial.
Witness, what do you have to say in your defense? So this is how our modern justice system works, is it? So what if the ink in my pen runs dry? So what if my pencil snaps? I can always claw my way back into the game. I have plenty in reserve. Ah! You claim I sucked the poison up into my pen. That's wild speculation, nothing more. If you thought you could bring down a fine, upstanding citizen with a trick like that, think again. It looks as though it's going to take one final decisive blow to finish this matter. As I see it, the situation is now very simple. It rests upon whether or not this witness did indeed steal the poison on the day in question. And therefore, it all depends upon whether or not the defense can prove that he did with evidence. No such evidence could possibly exist.
Objection!
Many Memo-san, this is how our modern justice system works.
What?
In the courtroom, evidence is everything. Something you would do well to remember. Because we are well past the point of speculation at this stage, I assure you.
Very well then. I call upon the defense to present the aforementioned evidence.
This is it then. This will be the final piece in the puzzle. The defense can prove by means of this item that it was the witness's pen that was used to steal the poison.
Take that!
It's still in there.
Counsel, what is that bottle?
This bottle contains the unique chemical reagent that can identify the poison in question.
Yes, that poison is an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids developed by my colleagues and I. It would be impossible to detect traces of it by any other method.
Or, from another perspective, simply with this chemical reagent, anybody at all could check for traces of the poison.
A reagent? What?
One drop of the contents of this bottle on the tip of your fountain pen, Many Memo-san, is all it will take to solve this case beyond all reasonable doubt.
No, you can't. I won't.
Your crimes are bad enough, but at least know when to admit defeat. Your Excellency, the defense requests permission to carry out the test on the fountain pen at once.
Yeah. This isn't my fault! The Empire drove me to this, trying to hold his head high as a civilized nation, but bowing his head to every foreign power's whim. I took him up and informed my pen. I fought tirelessly in the battle for the news, all in the name of justice, righteousness, and Suzuto, with me! I'm there! Ah,
Did I do it right? That was a Susanoo takedown, wasn't it? Not quite. That was a Ryotaro takedown.
Ryotaro takedown!